by Matthew Continetti. Matt is a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a columnist for the Washington Free Beacon. He's also the Washington columnist for Commentary Magazine and a regular contributor to the Commentary podcast. Good morning, Matt. I want to begin by telling you thank you for a podcast yesterday, the equal of any I have ever heard. I sent a mash note to John Podhoretz, your editor-in-chief, because the election day is the longest day of all, and you guys went long, and I just thought it was a brilliant compilation of insight, takeaways, predictions, conversation, and then the John Williams recommendation at the end. Having said all that, what do you think about everything we know this morning?
Well, I think it's a pretty remarkable morning. The first thing is we know the winner. The networks calling and the AP calling the election for Donald Trump around 5:30 this morning. That is sooner than I think many people expected. We don't have to go through the long recounts and the lawfare over election results. It's also remarkable that Donald Trump is on track to win the popular vote. If that happens, Hugh, it would be the first time that a Republican has won the popular vote in a generation. And so when you look at what's happened over the last 24 hours in these election results, remarkable is the word. It's not only the fact that Donald Trump has come back after kind of being written off as a political artifact after January 2021 to now winning a second non-consecutive term for president, bringing in a Republican Senate with we don't know the exact number of new Republican senators, but we have the potential to reach the highest number of Republican senators, certainly in the 21st century, and maybe even longer than that. The House will take a little bit longer to figure out, but it looks pretty good for the GOP. So I just think it's an incredible testament to Donald Trump's willpower, tenacity, vision, and also, of course, a negative reflection on the Biden legacy and the Harris campaign.
Now, Matt, I want to thank Abe Greenwald as well, and everyone, actually. You all had contempt for extreme rhetoric of consequences that, the last time we'll ever vote, et cetera. But I think Abe is right in his 180 that some people on the left are positively going to be distraught and distressed to the point of maybe not being able to deal with this. Do you think that's true, or is it so actually massive that they might look inward and reflect that their blue bubble is just too thick?
Well, I don't think self-reflection is a quality of the left, Hugh. So I don't rate the chances of that happening very high. I will say that I'm here in New York City covering the election. And as the results were coming in and things started trending in Trump's direction, there was a pro-Hamas protest that broke out in Midtown. I could see more of that in the days ahead. I do think Antifa will return. Parts of the resistance will return. There will be aspects of the second Trump term that will resemble the first. On the other hand, when you look at the breadth and depth of the coalition that is returning Donald Trump to the White House after 4 years in absentia, I don't know how effective these campaigns, both activist and information campaigns by the left, will be. I mean, it's stunning, Hugh, to look at the results among Hispanic voters. I mean, Hispanic voters have closed the gap. They are now divided evenly between the parties. Trump seems to be doing better among Hispanics than George W. Bush in 2004. When you look at black men giving about a quarter of the vote to Donald Trump, this is remarkable. Younger people, of course, which overlaps with the minority categories, also trending Republican. So I think that the left may have to, or at least the center left, may have to say, okay, let's take a breath before we go all in trying to stop Donald Trump and the MAGA agenda.
Matt, yesterday, and I can't recommend commentaries podcast from yesterday strongly enough. It is the equal of any podcast I've ever listened to. You were feeling your way around different parts of the elephant, and I was saying, it's the family, it's the family, it's the family. Latino men, black men are trying to protect their families, both economically and culturally, at the same time that the country is working through the difficult process of abortion being decided by elected representatives. Florida rejected the rejection of their abortion law. Montana constitutionalized one. So it's a long process, but the political system is up to it. What I especially appreciated, as you pointed out, this election was fundamentally unserious on the subject of China, on the subject of Israel, on national security generally. There was hardly any conversation about the judiciary. And I blame elite media because, I jokingly posted on X, I tried, Matt. I only got 3 questions at one debate. They were all about China. But legacy media just doesn't care about national security, and we have to change that.
I do think you're right, Hugh. At the same time, I think this election is a death knell for legacy media. I mean, I really do. I mean, you look at the fact that confidence in the media has collapsed in recent years. When you look at the proliferation of different outlets, also the role that podcasts played in this election. Donald Trump had a strategy from the very beginning that he was going to reach out to new audiences, to younger men, to people who are not considered normal Republican voters through the medium of podcasts. He got that Joe Rogan endorsement at the last minute. He was going everywhere. His appearances early on at UFC matches, again, getting the reaction from the crowd, a very Hispanic audience for UFC and mixed martial arts. So I think you're absolutely right. The media needs to get its act together. I'm skeptical that it will, but in the long run, it won't matter as much because we're finding new ways to work around the media. And I'm just on Florida briefly. I mean, wow. I want RFK Jr. to figure out what's in the water in Florida because we need to get that all over the country. I mean, double digits, 1.5 million margin. People were talking that Rick Scott, the incumbent senator there, might have been threatened. No way, no how. And yes, a social conservative vote in Florida as well. Just to take a step back and think about 24 years ago, as a college student, I was staying up until 4 in the morning after election night because of the beginnings of the Florida recount that would last 6 weeks before the election was called. Here we had Florida results within an hour. Someone was joking on X as the night went on that, just to pass the time, Florida had counted all of its votes again. Whatever's happening in Florida, I think we need more of it in the USA, and I think we'll get a little bit more of it now with Donald Trump and a Republican Senate.
Now, Matt, I want to pick up on the disintermediation of legacy media by the rise. For a long time, we've had all talk radio was the first bridge from 1989 to about the rise of blogging in 2010. And we're still around on talk radio. And then blogging came along and Twitter came along, and then Elon took over Twitter and turned it into X. And now podcasting has come along. And I consumed yesterday in order Ruthless, Getting Hammered, Time to Israel podcast, Comfortably Smug, Walk 10 minutes. That's for me, and I'm a news guy, about 6 hours of content, and it's by smart people who know what they're talking about. And I think there is a need for that. And I think it's going to ascend, it's going to disintermediate advertising. I don't know how many people know about Commentary Pod, but I sure, if I wanted to reach the center right in America and I wanted to reach people who are national security, I'd buy every ad I could on the Commentary Pod, like I see Ruthless buying. Do you think there's an upper limit to that, or do you actually? I think, or let me phrase it differently. How quickly will legacy media collapse? And I mean actually collapse.
Well, I think there will be some institutions that are able to last, Hugh, because I think in this new media environment, advertising actually counts for less. And it's more about subscriptions and audience loyalty. And so the fact is, an institution like the New York Times has a lot of subscriptions and a lot of loyalty. Other institutions may not be so lucky. And so there will be a sorting out. But I think the real move here, the real shift is subscribing to voices you trust. It's not a top down process. It's not a group of people here in New York saying, okay, this is the story of the day. And Walter Cronkite, that's what you're going to say on the evening news. And it will be in the New York Times next morning. And everybody in America will have to go off it. It's on the individual basis. It's on the basis of the communities you inhabit. And so that's going to be the new model. And I like this model because I think it adds to a proliferation of voices. It creates I think, a needed skepticism towards some of the messages we hear from formerly authoritative sources. And I think it also does offer economic opportunities for people who can attract their own audiences. I mean, again, just to talk about the remarkable aspects of this election, the fact that at the last rally, Megyn Kelly appeared alongside Donald Trump. And here's somebody who came from cable. I think started off very briefly in legacy media, but she came from cable. Then she went back to legacy media. Now she's a superstar through her podcast and YouTube channel. And I think that's going to be
It's
what we'll
remarkable.
see.
I also think people need expertise. So when I need to know about Israel, especially, I go to Times of Israel, I go to commentary, and I want to come to the national security implications of the election last night. But how comfortable are you, quick guess, that President-elect Trump will turn to the Tom Cottons and the Michael Waltzes and the Mike Pompeos and the other Robert O'Briens and Rick Grinnells and John Ratcliffe's who have track records in national security and get them up and announced, because we live in a dangerous world?
I'm fairly confident. If this goes like 2016 did, Trump kind of dove into the transition process fairly early. If anything, this time it's a much smoother process. I think there have been a lot of tracks that have been happening, including with the official transition. And, one of the characteristics of this campaign, Hugh, I think one of the reasons that Donald Trump has won this decisive victory is he has had very good advisors. The Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita team, they know what they are doing. They got Donald Trump crushing the opposition in the primary, and they followed the same strategy of going after younger, diverse audiences, and it paid off. So I trust them in the transition as well.
I am back briefly with Matt Continetti. It will take us a while to get the full set of data on the Jewish American vote, but it looks like Donald Trump did very well, Matt. Very well. 43% of the Jewish vote in Florida and in the Philly exurbs, it looks pretty good. What does that portend for America returning as a full-throated ally of the state of Israel?
Well, I think it portends good things. I mean, Donald Trump made no secret of his support for Israel throughout this campaign. He has on the record saying to Bibi Netanyahu that to finish the war, to do what needs to be done to get the war resolved. He also do what needs to be done regarding Iran. And I think the next couple of months, even in the transition, Iran will become very important. As you know, it has claimed that it's going to attack Israel for the third time. We know that Donald Trump will be on Israel's side should that attack occur. So, the Jewish vote, of course, it's a small group with a lot of different gradations. And what we see, I think, in some of these exit polls is that Jewish voters who put Israel at the top of their priorities, who have been alarmed at the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States, they have shifted toward Donald Trump. Jewish voters who are more observant in their religious practices, Orthodox Jewish voters, for example, they shifted toward Trump. That doesn't mean that all American Jews supported Trump, far from it. But when you look at those two categories, it's a clear move that you can see in Florida, you can see in Pennsylvania, you can see in New York. I mean, the New York result is amazing, Hugh. 10 points separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. The Bronx becoming a place where Donald Trump is outperforming Republicans in half a century or more. So yes, you can see it in specific locations among different types of Jewish voters who put Israel at the top of their concerns and who are also more observant in their religious practice.
Well, Matt, I look forward to today's commentary podcast. And again, I thank you for yesterday's effort and for the John Williams recommendation. I never got to it because I was overwhelmed by the election. But as soon as the fetching Mrs. Hewitt returned, she wants to wait and watch it. You guys did such a wonderful job selling that. You did a better job selling it. John Podhoretz really does know everything, doesn't he? It's kind of
He does.
astonishing how much
It can be hard to work for him. Yes,
it's very
exactly, 'cause he
annoying,
knows it
actually,
all.
to know how little I know compared to John. Oh, well, he's done 60 scores and 55 Gilligan's Island. I was blown away. Matt Continetti. Follow him at Continetti on X and follow me in the next segment. Thank you, Matt.